So now we are ready to look about our generative model for graphs, and this generative model is called graph RNN, and it will allow us to generate realistic graphs without making any kind of inductive bias assumptions, and the model will be, as we will see, extremely general and scalable, and being able to generate a vast diversity of different types of graphs of different sizes and shapes and structures and so on. So the key idea that we are going to harness here is that we want to generate graphs via sequential adding of nodes and edges. And why do we want to do it this way? We want to do it this way exactly what I explained at the end of the previous segment, which is that basically we want to model a complex distribution that captures distribution over graphs. Modeling that complex distribution we don't know how to do, so we are going to break that complex distribution into many small parts. And the way we break creation of the graph, we are going to break it into many small parts, into many small actions, and we are simply, all we'll have to do is model model transition probabilities, basically saying, given the graph, given the actions we have made so far, conditioning on that, what is the next action we want to take? And this way, by multiplying this together, we are able to model kind of the entire distribution, all the dependencies in it, right? So in our case, the idea is that, imagine I have this graph and I want to generate it. The way I'm going to describe the generation process is that I'll start with the first node, and then I'll add the second node. The second node will link to the first one. Now I have already built, a bit of the graph. A third node is added and links to the first node. Then node number 4 is added and links to 2 and 3. And then node number 5 is added and it links to 3 and 4. Right? So that's basically the generative process I want to model and I want to capture. And in this part of the lecture, I'm going to explain to you the model called graph RNN. And here is the link to the paper. So if you want more details, you can read the paper that I'm citing here. So let's think about this modeling graphs or generating graphs as sequences, right? A graph with node ordering pi can be uniquely mapped into a sequence of nodes and edge additions S. What do I mean by this, right? Like, graph is a set of nodes and a set of objects. And a priori, graph has no ordering to it. So we need this node ordering, this permutation pi, that determines the order in which the nodes appear. And given that ordering in which the nodes appear, then the sequence to generate the graph is uniquely defined. Because first I add the second node, first I add the first node, then I add the second node, I add the third node, and then in terms of adding edges, I can always say, I ask, should I link to node 1? Yes, no. Should I link to node 2? Yes, no. Until all the nodes that are already present in the graph, right? So that is basically the key idea is that we need some node ordering, and given that node ordering, then generating the graph is simply a sequence problem. Another observation that is important for graph generation is that this sequence is actually a two-level sequence. There is a sequence of adding nodes, and there is a sequence of adding edges, right? At node level sequence, at each step we add a new node. And then we also have the second level. After a node is added, the edges need to be added for that given node. So this means we have a two-level sequence where we will first have the high-level node level sequence, and then the low-level edge level sequence, right? Node level, a step, we do one node level step, and then we do a lot of edge level steps, and then we do a node level step, and we do a lot of edge level steps. And each edge level step is simply an addition of a new edge, right? So you can think of node level steps being add node 1, add node 2, add node 3, while the sequence elements in the edge level are, should I add this node, this new node that I have added, should I connect it to node 1? Should I connect it to node 2? Should I connect it to node 3? And you can think of this as generating a binary sequence that says don't connect, 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 right? So that's the idea. So a summary of what we have learned so far is that a graph plus a node ordering gives us a unique sequence of sequences to generate a given graph. A node ordering, for now, let's assume is randomly selected or somehow it's given to us. We'll come to this question later. And the way you can think of this is, right, if basically is to say, oh, if I have a partially built graph and I want to add a new node, then, you know, adding this node to the graph simply means I have to print out this particular column of the adjacency matrix, right? Basically saying node 4 doesn't link to node 1, node 4 links to node 2, and node 4 links to node 3, right? This is first node, second node, third node, and we just generated the column of the adjacency matrix for the node number 4. So node level sequence is going to add one new column to the adjacency matrix, and edge level sequence is going to kind of print out the rows, the entries of this column, where 0 means the edge does not exist and 1 means that the edge exists. So far we have transformed the graph generation problem into a sequence generation problem. Now we need to model the two processes, the process of adding new nodes, where basically we want to generate a state for a new node, and then we want to generate edges for the new node based on its state, right? And this will be the edge level sequence. So the point will be that an approach we are going to use is we are going to use what are called recurrent neural networks to model this two-level sequence. And we are going to use like a nested recurrent neural network, as I'm going to explain. So the idea is the following, right? What are recurrent neural networks? Recurrent neural networks are designed for sequential data. And a recurrent neural network sequentially takes an input sequence to update its hidden state, and based on the hidden state, the idea is that this hidden state summarizes all the information input to the RNN so far, and then the update is conducted via what is called RNN cells, right? For every time step, I have a new RNN cell. So the way you can think of it is, I initialize the RNN with some hidden state, I give it the input, the RNN is going to update its hidden state and put it here, and it's going also to create an output. And now at the second time step, this hidden state next cell is going to take as the input. It's going to take as the input from the environment. It's going to update its hidden state, here denoted as S2, and it's going also to produce me an output. Right? So basically the idea is that this hidden state S kind of keeps memory of what the RNN, what kind of inputs the RNN has seen so far. So to tell you kind of more and give you more mathematics, S sub t is the state of the RNN at step t, X sub t is the input to the RNN at that time, and Y sub t is the output of the RNN at that time. And the RNN has several parameters, and these parameters are called W, U, and V, and these are trainable parameters. This could be trainable vectors, trainable matrices. And the way the update equations go is the following. Hidden state gets updated by basically saying what is the hidden state in the previous time step. Let's transform it. What is the new input at the current time? Let's transform it, pass it through the nonlinearity, and that is my updated hidden state. And then the output Y, is simply a transformation of the hidden state, and this is what what we are going to output. In our case, S, X, and T will be scalars, right? So basically we are going to output a scalar that will tell us whether there is an edge or not. Of course, you can have more expressive cells like GRU, LSTM, and so on, but here I'm talking about kind of RNN, which basically is the most basic of these sequence-based models. So far we learned what is RNN. Now we want to talk about how do we use the RNN to model the node level and the edge level sequence. And the relationship between two RNNs is the following, is that node level RNN generates the initial state for the edge level RNN, and then edge level RNN is going to kind of produce the sequence of edges for that new node. And then it's going to pass its state back to the node level RNN, who's going to generate a new node, update the state, and kind of push it down to the edge level RNN. So this is how this is going to work. So to give you an idea, we will initialize the node level RNN with a start of a sequence, and we will the node level RNN is going to create a node. Now the edge level RNN, given this node is created, a node level RNN will add a new node and then ask the edge level RNN to generate edges for it, right? So node 1 is already there. Now node level RNN decides to add one more node, node number 2. Now the edge level RNN has to say does 2 link to 1. And this number 1 here would say that 1 links to 2. And here is now the new graph. Now the node RNN says, okay, let's add a new node, number 3. Now we ask the edge level RNN to generate the edges for the node 3. And node 3 will say, it links to the first node, but does not link to the second node. So now our new graph is like this. And again, the node level RNN decides, let's add one more node, let's add node 4. And the edge level RNN prints out basically a sequence of zeros and ones that will mean, does 4 link to node 1, does it link to node 2, or does it link to node 3? And 4 links to 2 and 3, so here is now the current graph. And then node level RNN says, okay, let's add one more node, node 5. Edge level RNN outputs for every previous node, it tells us whether 5 should link to it or not, and that's how we get the graph. And the generation will stop when the node level RNN will say, I'm done, I won't create any new nodes. So this is the idea, right? Where edge level RNN sequentially predicts if a new node will connect to each of the previous nodes. Now, how do we do this with RNNs? So let me give you more ideas. So in terms of how we use the RNN to generate the sequence, we are basically going to take the output of the previous cell and put it as an input of the next cell, right? So whatever the previous decision output was, for example, whatever was the previous edge, that will be the input to the next cell at the next time step. How do we initialize the input sequence? We initialize it to have a special token. We basically train the neural network that when it gets this special token, we'll call this token SOS, so start of sequence, as the initial input, the network starts generating the output. Usually, SOS, when I say a special token, it could be a vector of all zeros, or it could be a vector of all ones, for example, just something you reserve. And then, when do we stop the generation? We stop the generation when the end of sequence token is produced, right? And if end of sequence is 0, then RNN will continue generation. And if end of sequence is 1, the RNN will stop the generation. So to give you an idea now, right, like how does this fit together? We'll somehow initialize the hidden state. We'll input the start of sequence token, the RNN is going to generate some output, and then we are going to kind of connect this output as the input to the next step. And of course, the hidden state will get updated. And now, given the hidden state and given the output from the previous state, this is again going to be combined here. Another output is going to be produced and another hidden state is going to be updated, right? This is all good. But the problem with the model as I wrote it right now is that it's all deterministic, right? It's all a set of deterministic equations that are in a deterministic way generating these edges and nodes. So what we want is a stochastic model. We want a model that will have some randomness to it. So, right, our goal is to use RNN to do model this P model, and RNN really we are using it to model this product of conditional distributions, right? So these marginal distributions of P of xt given everything else, right? And let's write that y sub t is the P model of x sub t given all the x's that were previously generated. Then, right, this means we need to be able to sample x t plus 1 from yt. So essentially, we want to be able to sample from this P model from this single dimensional distribution. This means that each step of RNN now it's going to output a probability of a single edge. So at each step of the edge level RNN is going to output a probability of a single edge. And then, based on that probability, we are going to flip a coin. We are going to sample from that Bernoulli defined by that probability, and then whether we get 0 or 1, that is actually going to be input to the next step, right? So rather than saying the RNN generates an edge, RNN generates a probability, and then we have a stochastic event, a coin flip with that bias that then lands heads or tails, 0 or 1, and we use that as an input to the next step. So that is essentially the idea, right? So at the generation time, at the test time, let's assume we have already trained the model, right? Then how this is going to work is that our y sub t will be a probability, will be a scalar, will be basically a Bernoulli distribution. And let's use this square to mean that this is a probability, and this square takes value 1 with probability p, and it takes value 0 with probability 1 minus p. Right? So the idea will be that we'll start our RNN, it will output a probability, and now we are going to flip a coin with that bias to decide whether there is an edge or not, and whatever is the output of this coin, we are going to use this as an input to the next state, to the next cell. And again, we are going to get another probability, flip the coin, get the realization, and include that as an input to the RNN cell, who's going to give me another probability. Right? So this is how we are going to generate, or how we are going to unroll this RNN. Now, the question is, how do we use the training data? How do we use the training graphs that we are given? Right? This access. And in order to train the model, we are assuming that we are observing the graph that was given to us. So this means we observe a sequence of edges. We basically assume we observe how the given graph was generated. So we observe zeros and ones, whether that correspond to whether the edges exist or edges don't exist. And we are going to use this notion of teacher forcing, this technique of feature forcing that replaces the input and the output by the real sequence. So the point will be the following, right? We are going to start the model, and the model is going to output some probability of an edge. But at the training time, we are not going now to flip a coin and use that as an input to the next cell. We're actually going to say, okay, what was the true value there? Oh, the true value was there was no edge. So we are going to force this as an input to the next step. So, right, teacher is kind of forcing the student, right? Whatever the student does in the next step, teacher corrects the student, and the student starts with the right input for the next step. Right? So the point is that the inputs will be the correct sequence, not the sequence generated by the model, and this is called teacher forcing. Now, of course, we need to define the loss that measures the discrepancy between the output of the model, the output of the student, and the ground truth sequence that we try to teach the model to generate. And we are going to use binary cross entropy loss function, which you can write out the following. You can, like, the star is the y is a binary variable, 0, 1. 1 means edge exists, 0 means that does not exist, and y without the star is the probability of the edge, right? And basically the idea is that because y star is either 0 or 1, if only one of these two terms is going to survive when we actually implement it, because when the y star comes in. And basically the idea is, if y star is 1, then the loss really boils down to minus log y1. So basically, in order for us to minimize the loss, we want to make log of y1 to be as close to 0 as possible, which means we want to make y as close to 1 as possible. And then, if we want to now, on the other hand, if the edge is not present, then we want to minimize minus log of 1 minus y1, right? And here we want to make y1 lower, so that the entire expression again is log of something close to 1, which will be close to 0. So this way, y1 is fitting to the data sample's y star, right? And again, just to remind you, y1 or these y's are computed by the RNN, and the loss is going to adjust the RNN parameters, those matrices W, U, and V, using backpropagation to try to minimize the loss, minimize the discrepancy between the true sequence and the generated probabilities. And basically the point is that the loss will say wherever there is a 0, generate a probability that's close to 0, and wherever there is a 1, generate a probability that is close to 1. Okay, so with all this, let's put things together. So our plan is the following. We want to have two RNNs. First, we want to have an RNN that will add one node at each step. And we will use the output of it to initialize the edge level RNN. And then the edge level RNN is going to predict what other nodes, what existing nodes does the new node connect to. And then, then we are going to add another node, and we'll use the last hidden state of the edge level RNN to initialize the node level RNN for one more step. And then how are we going to stop the generation? If the edge level RNN is going to output the end of sequence at step 1, we know that no edges are connected to the new node, and we are going to stop the generation. So it's actually the edge level RNN that we have decided will determine whether we stop generating the graph or not. So let me give you now an example so that you see how all this fits together. So this is kind of what is going to happen at the training time. For, let's say, a given observed training graph. We are starting with the start of sequence and a hidden state. We add the node level RNN will add a node, and then the edge level RNN will be asked, shall this node that has just been added, shall it link to the previous nodes, yes or no? It will update the probability, and we are then going to flip a coin that will determine, with this given bias, that will determine whether the edge is added or not, and then we'll take this and use it as an input, as an initialization back to the node level RNN, who's now going to add the second node, and this would be node number 3. And then the edge level RNN is going to tell us, will node 3 link to node 1, will node 3 link to node 2. And again, it's outputting probabilities, we are flipping the coins, whatever is the output of that coin is the input to the next level RNN, right? So here, the probability is 0.6, perhaps we were lucky, the output was 1, so this is the input for the next edge, right? And then, after we have traversed over all the previous edges, we are going over all the previous nodes, we are again going to ask node RNN to generate a new node, and so on and so forth. And this is going to continue, right, until the last node has been added. Then the node RNN will add one more node, but the edge level RNN will say, I'm not willing to connect it to anyone else, so this is the end of sequence, and we stop. So basically it's like, when we add an isolated node, we know that's the signal that we want to stop. So that's the idea, right? And then, for each prediction, here we are going to get supervision from the ground truth, right? So the point is that we will be doing teacher forcing, right? So even, for example, here, when this was 0.6 and we did a coin flip and maybe we were unlucky and we got a 0, we are going to output the true edge, as we said, the teacher forcing. And then the structure of our neural network, when we do backpropagation, we'll be basically doing backpropagation through time. Right, we are going to basically backprop from all these events all the way to the beginning, to the beginning of time, to the first node in the graph, to update the parameters of the RNN. Right, and then how about at the test time, at the generation time? We are basically going to sample the connectivity based on the predicted distributions, predicted probabilities, and we are going to replace the input at each step by the RNN's own prediction or own output, right? So here we are going to flip the coin will say what it will say, and it will go as an input to the next one. And I think, here we are going to do the coin, whatever is the output here should be the input to the next step. So, should be a 0 here, it's a mistake. Okay, so that's the idea. So the summary is, we have casted the problem of graph generation as a problem of sequence generation, actually a problem of a two-level sequence generation, a node level sequence and an edge level sequence, and we use recurrent neural networks to generate these sequences. And what I want to discuss next is, how do we make the RNN tractable and how do we evaluate it?